Okay.
And okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inlay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and with us today is another one of the great PPC candidates that have agreed to come on to my show, Mr. Peter Bruce. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you, Payment. It's great to be here.
No, thanks for having the patience to come back on. We had some scheduling issues last time. Apologies for that. That one was my fault.
Well, I think maybe the mess up was at my end, but it's gracious of you to say so.
I'll take the responsibility for that one. Peter, just to get things started, can you please tell the audience a little about yourself?
Yeah. Okay. I I grew up in Toronto, Ontario. Actually, um, I finished I finished technical school there in 1981, and I was offered a job with Saskatchewan Telecommunications in Regina, Saskatchewan, right at the time I was graduating. And I was offered a job as a technician in long distance voice and data carrier, looking after that kind of equipment. And I had never been to the West. I had never lived out there. So many of my former colleagues from high school and some of my relatives had been out there and had made some good money, and came back eventually, a lot of them. And I thought, well, hey, why not give it a shot? I've never seen the West. I don't know anything about Saskatchewan. And I moved out here, and I really sort of had to downsize my expectations when I got to Regina, because I was used to a city the size of Toronto. Uh, but the place had a charm of its own. There was a high trust in the community there. People would help each other out. They'd say hi to each other. They'd talk to each other, even though they weren't particularly well acquainted. Strangers would talk to each other, and I enjoyed my work. I enjoyed living in Regina. Eventually, I left the technical field and I became a technical writer, doing internal and external communication with the same company. And I've lived here now. Like I worked at SaskTel for 37 years. I retired 7 years ago, and I've continued to live here. I just enjoy the pace of life. Regina's a modestly large city, but I can get on my bicycle and ride 15 minutes in the westerly direction, and I'll be out in the prairie. In Toronto, you have to drive like 2.5 hours before the buildings get sparse enough that you're seeing forests. So I really enjoy that part of it.
All right, good stuff. Sorry, I just gotta say hello to Prairie. She's good evening, Prairie. She watches every episode. I almost want to reach out to her and tell her it's not necessary. I don't know where she finds the time, but thank you, Prairie. Um, you mentioned that Saskatchewan was a high trust sort of community back then. Um, is it still now, or have you seen it change over the last few decades?
Well, it still hangs on to that high trust element. I kind of chalk that up to the fact that Saskatchewan has two major cities. One is Saskatoon, one is Regina, and about seven smaller cities like Moose Jaw, Swift Current, the Battlefords, Prince Albert, Weyburn, Estevan, but Yorkton, of course. And they're like in the several thousand to tens of thousands. And Regina and Saskatoon were, when I moved here, Regina was less than 200,000, and Saskatoon, I think, was about 200,000. And you run into the same people so often that you become familiar. Um, One thing I noticed was traveling around by road on Saskatchewan. If you had any road trouble, like I remember one time I got a flat tire down near a place called Carlisle, which is sort of in the southeast part of the province. And, I was just getting the spare tire out and, you know, getting ready to change it. And the first vehicle that pulled by was a farmer. He pulled over in his truck and said, "Hey, can I give you a hand? Are you experiencing some trouble there?" And people do that here because they know that sooner or later they're going to be in the same boat and they're going to need the help of somebody else. Now, as it turns out, I didn't need help that time. I could have managed on my own, but there was that spirit of you know we're part of a community, and this is what we do. We help each other. There was another time I was driving back from Saskatoon, and like a brave young fellow, I was playing chicken with the gas tank. See how far I could get before the needle got like dead red kind of thing. And I started to lose my nerve, so I pulled over in this town called Lumsden, just 30 kilometers outside of Regina. And I thought I better get gas here. Well, it was Sunday and it was after 5 p.m. and everything was closed. But I honked at a guy and I said, "Excuse me, is there someplace I can get gas?" And he says, "Well, just follow me." So I followed him. It turns out he was the mayor of Lumsden, and he had a couple of cans of gas at home, and you know, he emptied one of them into my gas tank, which would get me back to town. And I offered him some money. He said, "No, no, no, this is good neighbor stuff." And I thought, well, thank you very much. And that was many years after I had first moved out here, but still, that spirit was alive, and I think it still is. I mean, we're facing adversities like all other places are. There's increased crime. There's increased, excuse me, drug use. Sadly, there's a lot of fentanyl deaths, as there are all across Canada. Um, there's gang violence, that kind of thing. But there still is that element of trust. I'm not going to say it's gone because it's not. I still see it, daily, weekly.
Um, on the issue of drugs, like I always say I'm in the drug capital of Canada, British Columbia, specifically Vancouver. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think what's the underlying cause of this? Is it government policy, which is, decriminalizing hard drugs, or is it something deeper, like the breakup of the family unit?
I think there's probably a lot of factors complementing each other. I think the breakdown of the family unit is one of the key things. Over the decades, we've got a much higher rate of divorce, a much higher rate of households where children are growing up without a father. Um, from everything I've learned, I mean, this is not my field of expertise, mind you, but everything I've learned about fatherless families is that they have a much higher rate of drug addiction, of incarceration, as young adults, depression, suicide, things like that. And, this results from either, there's never been a father there in the first place, or divorce has created a situation where fathers don't get to be a part of their children's lives as much as they ought to be for a healthy nurturing of children. I think also that I think drug liberalization, decriminalization of marijuana, that's I don't think that helps. Um, Especially since apparently the concentration of THC in cannabis is much higher than it used to be decades ago when the drug was, you know, people would bring it in from other countries or people would grow it in their basements and that kind of thing. I understand the THC content is much higher. And they're starting to see psychosis as a side effect of heavy marijuana use, whereas decades ago it wasn't. I mean, it had other bad attributes to be sure, but psychosis was not one of them. Um, there's a lot more foreign gangs operating in Canada now, where they can bring in large quantities of drugs more readily. So the access to drugs is higher. Um, yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's a confluence of a lot of things.
So I don't know, like I don't know how much older than me you are, but I was born in Iran, and I always tell people when you're in the Middle East, it's like you're 50 years behind. So if I
Oh,
was born in 1983, it's like I was born in 1933. Um, Divorce was almost non-existent. Like if you had a crazy husband or a crazy wife, you're stuck with them, right, for the sake of the children. And with respect to drug use, like if you do drugs, and specifically if you get addicted to them, you're on your own. The government won't help you. You're persona non grata. You're not invited to any family dinners, and the only person that will take care of you is your immediate family. Whereas here in Canada, it's almost like we're encouraging, we're saying that if you do drugs, you're a victim, you know? And I think with that pressure removed, you're seeing a lot.
yeah, I the easy access to drugs, like provided by the government. I think they've got that one wrong. Um, I don't think providing uh, people with addiction easy access to drugs is a way to help them stop using drugs. I think it enables them to go on using, uh, and then what we're finding out is a lot of them they'll take these drugs and sell them. What they don't use, and propagates the problem even further.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's generally not a good idea to give drug addicts free drugs. Who would have thought? Yeah.
Well, the thing that I think a lot of people forget is that drug addicts are people with a sickness. Uh, they need treatment. They need uh, they need care. They need people to help them, but that's not the kind of help they need. Um, they need to be given a good reason to stop using. They need to be, um, and ultimately it depends on an individual. A person has to want to start to go into recovery of their own volition. Uh, Otherwise, it's really meaningless. I've known a lot of people over the years with drug addiction. I've worked with them. I've spent time with them. A lot of them are my friends. The people who are recovering from addiction, they're there because they wanted to be. They're there because they hit rock bottom, and nobody was left to pick them up. And thankfully, in their case, rock bottom didn't mean loss of their own life. They still had their own life, and they were able to rebuild new lives. But it took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of investment in themselves and learning how to live differently and making it easy for people to get that crutch that's slowly killing them. That's not a solution.
No, I agree. Um, I guess the next thing I was going to ask you, I think you mentioned immigration. What is it like in Saskatchewan? Are you getting a lot of immigration coming in, and is it putting upward pressure on, for example, the price of housing?
Yeah, there are a lot of immigrants in Regina. When I moved to Regina in 1981, there was 160,000 people living here. I think it took about the next, I don't know, 25 to 30 years before we broke the 200,000 mark. And now we're at 263,000. We have a lot of immigrants here. Uh, Rents have gone through the roof. I remember the first apartment I rented here in 1981. It was a fairly large one bedroom with a door off the kitchen to a fire escape. And it was in an older building, but it was still a very sound building. I was paying $177 a month. Well, I think now you could pretty much drop a zero onto the end of that, and that's what you'd be paying. And there's a lot. I mean, not everything is that expensive, but uh, it's gone up a lot in the last, say, 15, 20 years. Rent has gone up a lot. From about the early 80s to the mid to late 90s, rents almost didn't change hardly. You could come back to the same apartment you rented 8 or 10 years earlier, and it was maybe 20 or 30 bucks a month more per month. And housing, like compared to the rest of Canada, housing is still, it's not crazy. Like you can buy condos for $200,000 here.
Really?
Yeah, one and two
Can't
bedroom.
can't buy a parking stall in Vancouver.
Yeah, no, I know it's just gone into the stratosphere. It's here. There's upward pressure on housing prices, but it's still doable for people to be able to get a mortgage and to afford a mortgage. It might take, like when I first came here, if you had a job, you could own a house. Now you have to have a better job, and it's better if there's two of you to pay for it, but it's still doable. I mean, a lot of places like Toronto, it's like if you're starting from scratch, I don't know how you're ever going to get ahead of that wave.
What do you think like, don't get me wrong, mass immigration is putting upward pressure on the price of housing, and it needs to stop to normalize the prices to release some of the pressure. But what before we leaned into mass immigration with Trudeau, what was it? Was it the low interest rate environment? Is it the fact that our economy is nothing without housing?
Um, well, in Saskatchewan, what first started the housing, the rise in housing prices was, yeah, okay, interest rates they weren't crazy low. I'm talking about 2005, 2006. But what happened was there was suddenly a boom in demand for the things Saskatchewan produced. Potash, grain. There was a lot of activity and employment in Saskatchewan. We were drawing people from outside the province for the first time in years. Like I'd say for the first 24, 25 years I lived in Saskatchewan, our biggest export was people. We were always slightly under 1 million people. And then 2006 came around and suddenly we had hit that million threshold, and everybody was like, "Oh wow, we've got a million people now. Hey, isn't this something?" Now, to put that in perspective, in 1930, Saskatchewan had a million people. So the population hadn't grown in over 70 years. It had stayed the same. Saskatchewanians were moving to Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, outside of Saskatchewan because there wasn't as much economic activity back then. But then with the boom in the resource prices, suddenly you started seeing license plates from other provinces moving here. You started seeing traffic jams. You never saw traffic jams. If you stuck around your office for 20 minutes after work ended, you could drive home traffic free. You know, now there's traffic jams. Um, yeah, the so that's how it started. But and it continued like that through you know the early 2010s. But in more recent years, in the last 7-8 years, we've seen a lot of growth in immigration. Um, much more than we'd seen before. And so there are a lot more immigrants here. They require a lot more housing. And I guess we reached some kind of record, or somebody reported some statistics just the other day that Saskatchewan has some housing starts where we're keeping up with demand a little bit, which is not the case elsewhere.
I was talking to another PPC candidate yesterday it was yesterday morning. He's from Quebec and he's a builder. And I asked him, I'm like, what's the deal with this housing shortage? And he goes, well, you're bringing in all these immigrants and building a house, like there are certain bottlenecks. Like, sure, you could get somebody to, put some 2x4s together, but like laying down concrete and leveling it, like there might be a limited number of skilled laborers that can do that. So
Right.
so we just can't build houses as fast as Ottawa is bringing in these people.
Well, yeah, that's certainly a challenge. We're getting too many people in too fast for the economy to be able to adjust to accommodate them. And I don't follow the government's logic that, well, it's important to get even more immigrants in because then they can become builders and build houses even faster. But I think that's just the cat chasing its tail. It's just um, becomes kind of a whirling dervish. Um, there's more people here who need more housing, and more of them need to be involved in the housing industry to make houses for themselves and for the next group of people who come in who are going to need more housing, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's the word Ponzi scheme comes to mind. Like you just have to keep bringing more people in.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. I think we need to have a timeout. There needs to be a pause in immigration. I think there needs to be a moratorium uh, so that the country has enough breathing room to, for the economy to get its bearings, for the all the factors in the economy to, you know, reach an equilibrium again uh, before we can start bringing more people in. That's my belief.
I'm going to share my view on one other thing about immigration, and then we can move on.
Sure.
I'm in West Vancouver. I just went to North Vancouver. It's adjacent to our riding, but it's more there's more immigrants. It's principally Iranians, but like there were so many restaurants that are popping up. So we're bringing in immigrants, and they're building restaurants. I get that they're providing a service, but in the back of my mind, I'm asking myself, like, is this the purpose of life? Like for a society to bring in people to build restaurants? It's not like they're performing a vital service, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you know, that's yeah, we've got a lot of restaurants already. I know, like in apparently, and I was asking somebody about this the other day. About 40 years ago, Regina had the highest number of restaurants per capita as any city in Canada. I was talking with somebody about that the other day, and they informed me that that is still the case. Now, we can't just have a society based on restaurants alone. That's for sure. We need people to produce assets that people actually need. Inputs to developing the economy. Not just the service industry, but the production side of things too. We need to produce more, and restaurants. I mean, they provide meals, but that's only one facet of how an economy works. We have to produce housing, we have to produce healthcare materials, we've got to produce things that we use, automobiles, material for infrastructure development, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like actual goods and services. And I'm not dinging the service industry like restaurants.
Right.
But I have a sneaking suspicion that the government, the way they view it is, all right, we got these immigrants, these people, rather than them spending the money on rent and groceries for their restaurant in their country, let's give them a passport and let them do that here. But it's not really fair to the immigrants because at some point we're gonna hit like be fully saturated with restaurants. They're gonna not be making a profit.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, I think from the news I've been watching, it seems like a lot of immigrants are disappointed. They were promised, you know, this is going back about a year, okay, but immigrants were, coming to Canada and they were ending up on the street in tents in Toronto, and with no prospects, and they were told, well, yeah, this is the land of milk and honey. Well, it was like that at a time. I remember growing up, immigrants came to Canada. There was a great deal of deliberation put into, selecting immigrants who would be a good fit for Canada. And they came here and they were able to find work in their field, maybe not right away, but eventually. They were able to find a comfortable living. They were able to find, other people from their background that they could have the connection to a community, to help them orient themselves and, for the kind of assurance people need when they're a stranger in a strange land. So,
I guess to segue into another question, Prairie had a question. Sorry. Here, I'm just going to read this right. There's buzz about an election being called on Sunday. Are you guys ready? I'm going to let you take that one first.
I'm flying by the seat of my pants, Payman. I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. It's kind of overwhelming, but I know what steps I'm going to take next. So, how about yourself?
I'm operating in just prepare for the worst kind of category. where I've gotten all my 100 signatures. I've spent the last few years educating myself on all of the issues. The way I look at it, we don't have brand recognition, so we can't just like lean on the party logo. We actually have to know everything, and if we get asked a question, we have to be able to, respond to it.
Exactly. Yeah. I've got my 100 plus signatures too. I knocked those off last late summer and fall. And yeah, so yeah, brand recognition. No, I've acquainted myself well with the issues. Um, and yeah, it's just I'm going to be rounding up the members in my constituency and get some foot soldiers out there and start knocking on doors, handing out leaflets. So
Prairie, she says, I hope to see PPC in Parliament this time around. Absolutely, Prairie.
yeah, I do too. Um, I see. Well, there are some people who've been they're sort of farther down the road of experience than I am in terms of preparing myself to be a candidate. Um, I'm thinking of Michael Bator in Burlington.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, he's got a pretty impressive operation going there. So uh, I take as many pages out of his book as I can.
Michael Bader is one of the better ones. He's been around for a while and he's very committed. Peter Terrace, do you know him? He's good too.
I did meet Peter briefly at Revision 2024. Yeah, he's a pretty ambitious guy too.
Yeah, he's got a good strategy and he's got a good campaign manager. There's a whole bunch of other ones. I guess I don't need to list them off, but
Yeah. Well, I brought up Michael because I know him personally. He and I both worked on the by-election in Portage Lisgar in May and June of 2023. So yeah, I've seen him up close and personal, the way he operates, and yeah, cool guy.
he's got this ability to be like supremely positive when he's talking to just anybody. Um, and he's really good at diffusing like tense situations.
Yeah, he is. He has that rapport with people. He is very disarmingly positive and passionate about what he believes in his mission. He believes in our mission. He believes in the PPC, and it shows. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the PPC is the only way that we can take this country back, and if you don't believe that, just look at the way that the opposition is freaking out. Like they're trying to scare Canadian citizens into not voting for the PPC. What has it been? 3 elections now. They keep saying don't split the vote. What every election cycle, the leader is more evil than the one before.
Yeah, that's right. No, I know. And the fact is that it's typically not conservatives who end up coming into the folds of the PPC as supporters and members. It's people who have been terminally disengaged from politics in Canada because the other parties are just talking about the same things all the time and not addressing the issues that people really care about, or leaving them feeling that they don't really mean it. I mean, how many times have we seen the Conservative Party start out somewhat conservative and then start leaning into the center left when election time comes around? That's happened several times that I can think of. And I think people are getting fed up with it. I mean, that's why I joined the PPC. I had heard about Max creating a new party back in 2018. I didn't know much about them. I was sort of distracted with other things. But then I started getting emails from the PPC. And I checked out their platform and I thought, this is in June of 2019. And I thought, yeah, like there's none of those issues, none of the stance on those issues that I really have a problem with. They sound like pretty sound things. So I bought a membership. And then shortly after that, I started getting emails from the CEO of the Electoral District Association saying, we need volunteers. There's an election coming up in October. And so I came to one of their meetings and started doing stuff. Handed out flyers, knocked on doors, asking people if they'd mind putting up a sign, things like that. And it was interesting to talk to people. And there was I never really got much. I mean, there were some people who were being polite about it. They weren't interested, like, no thanks, and they didn't want to talk to us, and they probably didn't. They thought that, we were not something that represented them or their beliefs. I think there was only one time where somebody got really hostile, and they, I knocked on their door and there was no answer, and I put a brochure in their mailbox, and the guy came out and he looked at me and he crumpled up the brochure and threw it on his own front lawn, and then gave me the middle finger. And I
Why?
just looked at him and I said, "Hi, have a nice day." And that was it. But I expected a lot more of that, frankly. But it was no big deal.
Was he upset? Did he know you were PPC, or he just doesn't like people touching his mailbox?
Well, he did, because he looked at the brochure and he saw who we were, and it was like, "Oh, I know you guys. Yeah, you're those awful people." So he didn't say that, but from the scowl on his face, that's how I read him. So
There's a lot of people. Maybe Saskatchewan, you guys don't run into this. We had a David. We were trying to recall Premier David Eby. I think it
oh yeah,
was Premier back then, and like this is not even like a partisan issue. And the people I would talk to, they start trash talking the Conservative Party and the PPC. They're like, oh, they're all fascists. So like sometimes you go into these massively like liberal ridings, and the people are brainwashed by the CBC.
yeah, yeah. I understand your premier has granted himself almost unlimited powers now. With
Yeah, man. I mean, he's got to be able to get that safe supply out in timely manners. He can't let the democratic process get in the way.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about Bill C7. I mean, this was hidden in the HPOA, Health Professions and Occupations Act, where they can go around the legislative process and they can just bring in new laws, and people
Well,
just they're not paying attention.
yeah, I really, it really concerns me when all levels of government are trying to do these kind of things. I even see it at the level of school boards where they're censuring their own trustees if they're not on board with the whole trans agenda. Even when they want to just speak about the issue intelligently and openly, throwing parents out of meetings, that kind of thing. I mean, if it's getting right down to the school board trustee level, it's getting pretty bad. It's
Yeah, go ahead.
we gotta, you know, I'm seeing we're losing a high trust society here. There used to be a time where, even when I grew up, there was people who we never saw eye to eye politically, but we were friends. We respected each other. And it looks like people are starting to lose the, I don't know if it's the ability or just the willingness to keep doing that. It's like everybody's so sure that they're right that they don't need to listen to somebody else who says something different. It's hubris, but I know in my approach to people in my writing, I always start out, I'm a religious person, so I pray, and I pray for guidance to have humility when I'm doing my work, because I think if I lose that, I'm not going to win hearts and minds. And it takes a while to convince people that PPC has sound ideas, but I don't know. It's the way it has to be, I think.
One step at a time, yeah. Peter, you mentioned that you're a person of faith. What do you think, like Christianity's role should be in Canada? Do you think it's just like the Christianity did its job and it created a liberal Western democracy, or do you think that removing Christianity from the fabric of Canada is what's caused a lot of these problems?
Well, I believe that Canada, as part of Western civilization, is based on Judeo, laws that are grounded in the Judeo-Christian tradition. That's part of the substrate of the development of Western civilization. I don't believe Western civilization can survive without robust Christianity remaining part of Western civilization. It would be like, taking away the foundation or part of the foundation of a building and saying it can stand on its own. It doesn't need this anymore. I believe it does need that. I've just come to understand that in the last, say, I don't know, 5 to 8 years. I hadn't really given it a lot of thought, but I really believe that. We can't have, like, our political system is based on, assumptions about how we're going to behave with each other and treat each other and operate with each other. And if those assumptions are gone, then all you've got left is form. And if there's no spirit behind the form won't be maintained. I kind of liken it to, I think of it like, you get some young kids who are playing a board game. Could be Monopoly, could be Snakes and Ladders, and all they want to do is they want to win. So they start bending the rules. Well, let's just say that we don't have to follow this rule. Oh, well, okay, just this once. And then they don't. And then before you know it, you've got pandemonium. Well, how many times have we seen our government say that, yeah, we're not going to put all this legislation through the House of Commons. We'll have an order in council. Let's do that. Or, oh, I don't want to go out and negotiate with those truckers. I think they're bad people. The people at CBC says that they're paid by Russians and, or they're part of MAGA or something like that. So let's not have the police go out and negotiate with them, and they'll agree to move their trucks out to the periphery of town, and then the protesters can just come down to Parliament Hill day after day to peacefully protest. No, let's say that this is an emergency, and let's bring in the Emergency Act. We can get rid of this problem, and let's freeze people's bank accounts too. There are repercussions for things like this. I mean, I have no idea how many investors didn't come to Canada because they saw what could happen to their assets if they happen to be on the wrong side of an issue on a particular day. I'll never know that. But this is the kind of thing we're seeing. Grown people cheating at the political game. Trying to take shortcuts, not doing things the stand-up way, and that's going to undermine confidence and undermine some good habits and good traditions. Who knows what the knock-on consequences will be? It's got to stop. We've got to try and stop that.
So the question I asked you originally was about the role of Christianity, and I think this is, and you kind of went on to some other issues that were important too.
I
The
did
rule of law.
right.
No, it's fine. But you were touching on the rule of law and how people are violating that. They're not respecting it. There's like a debate or conversation that needs to be had, specifically about Christianity, like because half the country believes that this is a Christian, Judeo-Christian nation, whereas the other half, they just believe it's a post-national state. And we're not having that discussion of, listen, guys, like we have to figure out where we want to go. Those are two completely different directions. Obviously, I would rather go the Judeo-Christian way, but we need to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know that, and I mean, maybe you have some information on this that I don't have. So I'll defer to that if you have it. But half the country is of Christian background, European Christian background. The other half, I don't know that the other half believes we're a post-national state, or the government claims to, the liberal. Justin Trudeau said, we're a post-national state. That was his assertion. How many of the people in the country agree with him, or how many of the people even who voted for him agree with that proposition? I don't know. I don't think you can have a country without some kind of core identity, like ethnic or ethno-religious identity. I don't think you can have I don't believe you can have just a patchwork of people just operating on civic values. Because I think people, the way they work is, we start from our individual selves, and the next ring of relations is our immediate family, and the next ring of relations is our extended family. And the next ring of relations is, the people from whom we came from, and then after that, you've got society at large, that kind of thing. Those connections are closer than a lot of people admit, I think. I think to have Canada, the country as we know it, it's got to be, there has to be a robust Christian community that carries on for us to have the kind of political system that's going to be true to the values that it espouses.
You know, I 100% agree with you. And I've had this conversation with another gentleman, Jayant Bandari, and he said basically Canada has committed suicide because it's brought in so many people from different cultures. And when I say post-nationalist, like it's almost Justin Trudeau had this vision for a balkanized society where everyone is, everyone's different, but everyone gets along. But as you mentioned, like there are unwritten rules to, like, there's a culture to society that even to that cuts across politics.
Well, something else too, Payman, is that people in Canada, like I'm talking about the old stock Canadians, the people who grew up, they descended from either Anglo-Celtic or French uh, immigrants from generations ago, including me. Um, they have an assumption, like they have a view of they have universalist liberal values, right? But those liberal universalist values grew out of Western civilization. But they have this assumption that, or many of them have this assumption that uh, foreign peoples who come to Canada, they think just like we do, except they haven't had the opportunity to live like we do. And when they come here, they can live like we do, and then we'll all be living and thinking the same. And that's not what happens. In other parts of the world, like there's a very big gulf between worldviews. And if you have large numbers of people uh, in the host country with alternate worldviews, and they can congregate in communities where they don't necessarily really need to interact that much with the host culture, then a lot of them don't. And they carry on in Canada believing that we can carry on with the assumptions we had back in the old country in this new country. So that's my take on it. I think there's a there's a I don't know, a lack of imagination on the part of a lot of Canadians that everybody's going to think and be just like us, and I don't believe that's true.
I was talking to this immigrant. She came here from Hungary in like the 1950s.
Right.
And she told me, she goes, immigrants, they bring with them their culture because that's all they know. Like that's what they are. So, you can't blame them, but you just have to make sure that immigration is measured so that they can, integrate, assimilate, intermarry. But when you bring in too many of them too quickly, too many of us, you lose that ability.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. People, it's in people's nature to go with what you know. Uh, I don't begrudge people that, but we need to focus in Canada on integrating people. That's why I think it's important to have a pause in immigration, so we can integrate people, assimilate people into Canada, into Canadian society. Um, that's that's one step in building a higher trust society.
No, absolutely. Peter, we're approaching the 1 hour mark. So, in winding down the interview, how about we start by, if you could tell the audience where they could go to learn more about you?
Okay. yeah, if you want to learn more about me, you can find me on Facebook, Peter Bruce PPC, and yeah, I'm there.
All right. And what about like if somebody wants to get in contact with you or your EDA if they want to volunteer, is that possible?
Yeah, sure. You can email us at ppc Regina 2021 at gmail.com.
All right. And if they want to donate to you, do they go to your EDA website or the national website?
For the time being, go to the national website. Our our EDA is in the process of being integrated into the Greater Alberta region, and that process isn't complete yet. So in the meantime, our funds are with the head office, and yeah, you can send it to the national office. Your postal code will identify you as to what riding you live in, so the funds will get to the right place.
I always wondered about that. I thought it was based on the honor system and you had to fly all the way out of Gatineau and get in a fight with headquarters.
Well, who knows? More will be revealed, right?
Yeah.
I know we're getting
Uh,
now. I drove there last summer, so they're not going to hide from me. So,
yeah, it's just a casual 1,000-mile trip. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Uh, all right, Peter. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And
And
we
thank
didn't
you,
plan
Dave,
this.
for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. But best of luck with the election. And
You as well.
yeah, maybe our paths will cross. Who knows?
Okay. You take care.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye for now.